Well, thank you so much for having us. We're so happy to be here. There's so many old friends that are a part of the Global Philanthropy Forum, and we were thrilled to be able to come to you today to talk about a project that we have underway. As a brief bit of background, the amount of CO2 in the air as of May of 2020 hit an average of slightly greater than 417 parts per million. That's the highest average ever recorded, and it's up from 414 parts per million last year. And carbon dioxide levels are at the highest they've ever been in human history, probably the highest that they've ever been in 3 million years. And the last time there was this much CO2 in our atmosphere, surface temperatures were significantly warmer than they are today, and sea levels were between 50 to 80 feet higher than they are today. Currently, we have 5 million acres burning. Here in California, in Oregon, in Washington, hundreds, if not thousands, of homes have been lost, and hundreds of lives will be lost by the time this is over, at the very same time as we have a hurricane that has hit the southeastern portion of the country. We're in a full-blown climate emergency, and that emergency has had a devastating impact on biodiversity and ecosystems. I started the Climate Emergency Fund with Rory Kennedy and Eileen Getty to try to disrupt this sort of slow, terrifying trajectory that we're on as it relates to the climate emergency. And we funded a lot of different things, a lot of different activist groups. But today we're here to talk about an effort specifically focused on trying to stop the collapse of ecosystems and to stop species extinction. You know, I'll also say before I hand it off to Gerardo, who's leading this effort and who's one of the world's foremost conservation biologists, that just 100 companies in the world have been the source of more than 70% of the world's greenhouse gas emissions since the late 80s. And more than 1/3 of all global carbon emissions since 1965 can be attributed to the 20 largest fossil fuel companies. This is largely a corporate problem, and we think perhaps a part of it can be a corporate solution. So with that, let me hand you off to Gerardo, who will be the brains on this call. Gerardo? I think your mic is not on, Gerardo. You're muted.
Yeah, sorry about that. It is a great honor to be here with you. And let's remind us that we are all here in basically in isolation, and we cannot be together in this because of the COVID pandemic. And this COVID pandemic is related to what we're talking to you today, and it's extremely important. It's probably the most important, one of the most important challenges that we humans has faced in the history of all of humanity, and it's related to natural habitats and the illegal trade of animals. The COVID pandemic, like 50 other epidemics and pandemics that have occurred in the last 40 years, are related to the species extinction. Unfortunately, our research has shown that we're facing an unprecedented problem, that is the biodiversity loss. We're losing plants, animals, species of plants and animals at unprecedented rates. We have been doing a lot of these studies to try to show if the trends that we're looking are normal or this is something that is unique. And what we have found out, first of all, for instance, is that we have lost more than 600 species in the last 500 years, most of them in the last 100 years. And something that we were able to do just very recently is to be able to see if these were the normal trends. And based on the work of some of our colleagues, they look at millions of records of species in the last 65 million years. And they find out that during the normal times, we can basically lose 2 species for every 10,000 species every 100 years. That's the basic rate. This is translated basically what is that were lost 100 in 10,000. The current extinction rate is 10 to 1,000 times faster than what happened in the last 5 years. This is not new in the history of the life on Earth, but basically there have 5 mass extinctions in the previous past, and these 5 mass extinctions in the last 700 years basically have some characteristics. One, they were catastrophic. They were caused by a meteorite, for instance, of the changes in the oxygen in the seas, on the oceans of all the world. Second, they were really fast in terms of geological times, but really fast in geological terms means basically thousands or hundreds of thousands of years. And third, they vaporized between 70 to 90% of all life on Earth. It took between 10 to 15 million years to basically recover. So based on what we have learned in the last 5 years, we have now clearly shown that we have entered the 6th mass extinction. But in this case, the big meteorite, that is what vaporizes in life on Earth, is humans, is us. Something that is very important to understand is that the current extinction crisis is not only losing a species, we're losing thousands and thousands of species, but it's incredibly important to understand that we're losing many populations. And let me put you an example. If we have many forests, pine forests or temperate forests in Canada or in Europe or in Mexico, and the forests in California are destroyed, it doesn't really matter that there are all the forests, because the services, the benefits that the people in California get from the forest there are lost. So basically, our reply here is that we have to look at the extinction crisis, but at the population levels, maintaining species at regional and local levels, at national levels, but also at the global levels. So the current extinction crisis has to be dealt with populations and species. And this is very important because only in the last very few years, we have really understand that this is happening. And just to give you an idea of the gigantic losses of a species, not only we lose what we lost in 100 years, what we have lost in 10,000 years in terms of a species. Since 1980, we have lost between 70 to 80% of all the large animals, of all the individuals, just imagine, of all mammals, birds, reptiles, and amphibians, fishes. Between 70 to 80% of all the individuals that were in the forest, that were in the jungles, that were in the oceans, are gone. So that's the magnitude of the problem. And so what are the causes? What is being caused? Well, basically, we were going to be very reductionist. It will be overpopulation. We're too many. Around 300,000 people more on Earth every day. Second, overconsumption. We consume too much. And third, obsolete technologies. We're still using carbon fossils. And those consequences, those causes are being reflected on habitat loss. We have lost more than 60% of all the natural forests of the planet. And the illegal trade and overpopulation and overkilling. Just to give you an idea, in China, 100 million animals, mammals and birds are traded illegally, from the illegal trade every year. And it costs, the market is $74 billion, and it involves 40 million people. But this is driving a species to extinction on the one hand, and it's driving habitat to be destroyed. We're losing basically the capability of Earth to maintain life in general and to maintain human life in particular. And we scientists have called these environmental services. And environmental services are all the benefits we get for free from the proper work of nature. Just to give you two examples, quick examples. One is the proper combination of the gases of the atmosphere to have life on Earth depends on the wild plants and animals. All the drinking water that we have depends on the plants and animals like ecosystems of the planet. 75% of the crops that we use are pollinated by animals. And we're losing all of this because of our activities. And as I say, the current pandemic is related to this. So this massive, important problem has not been put in front as relevant as climate change, for instance. And we have good news for you today. And the good news is although this is a gigantic problem with a magnitude that we have never seen before, it can be solved. The data can be reversed. Basically, the good news is that we put our effort together, we can start to reverse the trend. The bad news are that we have the window of opportunity is closing. The first time we talked about this was in the 1990s. At that time, we have 30 or 40 years. Now, we have no more than 10 to 15 years to change the trends. What I have said is related to the human's activities and basically hasn't experienced yet the full-blown of the climate change, of the global disruption. Once all these ecosystem, natural ecosystem, start to feel and react to the climate change, the problems will be gigantic, much more harder. So our plight here is that the species and population extinction is one of the most important challenges faced for humanity, and it's something that we can solve, but we can only solve together. And let me finish with this. This was said in 1971 by Jean Dors, a very important scientist from France. Nature will only be safe if man loves it, simply because it's beautiful. For that too, it's an integral part of the human soul. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Gerardo. And now we're going to hand it over to Al Makouche. Al is one of the most brilliant creative minds in the world. He spends his time thinking about brand for some of the biggest companies in the world and has developed a very innovative approach to attempt to try to address the collapse of ecosystems and species extinction around the world. And it's called People versus Extinction. So Al, take it away.
Thank you, Trevor, and thank you, Gerardo. Thank you, everybody. It's a real privilege to be part of this conversation today. I mean, I'm definitely, of the three of us, the latest to this subject matter, and have been profoundly moved by the experience over the last 9 months of working with Trevor and Gerardo on the subject. So if Gerardo had a theme that I could build on, it would be about people. This is a unique and epic problem on a magnitude that has never been experienced before. And we, the people, have created this problem. So, I mean, conversely, from the background I come from, problems and solutions are really the sort of the trade in what creativity can be applied to. A unique problem requires a unique solution, because conversely, whilst we, the people, have created the problem, as Gerardo said, it is reversible, there is hope and there is possibility, but it requires we, the people, to be part of the solution, to drive the solution, and at scale. From a mass behavior change and a mass communication perspective, we have a fundamental challenge, because right now, the subject matter and the themes and the threads are still, to a large extent, existing in the margins of culture, in the margins of society, when they should be absolutely central and mainstream. So we've created People versus Extinction as a platform to convene all of the different parties, all of the different expertise that is going to be required to act in concert to create mass behavior change and create new demand cultures around solutions to the climate emergency, and looking actually at some of the sacrifices we're inevitably going to have to make. This is really about bringing the issue, the fight, the solutions, the actions, and the inevitable sacrifices center and mainstream and popularizing them. It's about mass awareness, deep understanding that leads to action and sacrifice. Now, the fundamental challenge cannot be ignored. One of the many consequences of the last 30 years has been the sheer abundance of everything, including the demand on consumers' attention. So we haven't developed as a species in order to be able to process the number of demands. We live in an attention economy. People are much more naturally inclined to give their attention to things that are either within their control or within their aspirational sets than they are to things that are out with their control. One of the challenges that I observe as somebody coming into this issue is that, to a large extent, it tends to find its way into people's consciousness via news. And quite rightly so, because news's job is to report the things that are of the greatest urgency in society at a local and a global level. The issue, however, is that it tends to present the most dramatic and the most negatively impactful aspects of the emergency without necessarily then counterpointing that with the solution. So what you end up with are heuristics and tropes around climate emergency, which invoke fear. And fear is incredibly problematic when it comes to mass communication and mass behavior change, because we do not cope as a species particularly well with threat and fear and challenge. You know, we all understand the sort of the roots of the fight or flight mechanism. Most people will naturally choose to avoid something that is conflict driven or invokes fear unless it truly is on their own doorstep. And part of the issue is that it can often be seen as if things are happening in other parts of the world and it doesn't necessarily relate to you, when of course, as Gerardo and all the scientists understand, the entire thing is interconnected. So if we don't believe that we can win this battle, then it's actually already lost. So that's a major, major challenge. Now, I come from the world of demand culture, creating demand, creating understanding. The thing that we are going to be able to bring to this particular project is world-class expertise, hopefully resource, creativity, and understanding of the mechanisms and levers and the enormous sophistication required to become part of the collective consciousness. This cannot exist only in the margins. This has to become mainstream. For it to become mainstream, it has to become popular to become populist. So there is a great deal of work to do in order to counterpoint the negative representation of the impact, which is important, but we still have to be able to shine a spotlight and championing the solutions and the people who are actually doing something about it, and then being able to present where people have some agency in solution and change. So People versus Extinction's mission is actually really about connecting the dots to galvanize the scientific community, the conservation community, the factual entertainment community, which I think is going to play an incredibly important role in this, but also to Trevor's point about the 100 companies that have the greatest impact on this issue, bringing the brand and the business community into the mainstream, into the center, along with a philanthropic community, which has got a vital and pivotal role to play in this mission. It is, none of us are as powerful as all of us. That's our sort of central mantra here. We are junction makers and conveners of collective action. So from an approach perspective, it's deceptively simple. If this is about mass awareness leading to mass understanding, leading to mass behavior, mass action and behavior change, then we need to have two critical components working in concert. It starts with data and starts with science, it starts with facts, and that being underpinned. So Gerardo and his team have already done an extraordinary amount of work in aggregating large data sets that are able to make sense of what is actually happening in as near as real time as possible on the ground. We're very fortunate to have had the commitment from an organization called Stamen, who are the world's leading data visualization specialists, who are going to help us build a digital species extinction center. We have James Honeyborn, who is the creator of Blue Planet 2 and one of the pioneers of using social video content to link to measurable actions within sort of culture. And it's been able to mine that data, translate it into powerful story, and then connect all of that effort with conservation efforts. And we have Jeff Morgan as Director of Programs and Operations from Global Conservation, who is going to act as convener for the conservation project community to be able to give us access to the positive solutions that are taking place that we can then popularize. And those two things combined equal momentum and hopefully building a community of great interest so that we can aggregate action and change. Thank you.
Al, well said. We need all of you to join us. We're currently looking for founding partners for People versus Extinction. And if you're interested in being involved, and if you care about the climate emergency and the effect on species extinction and ecosystem collapse, which we all should care about because we're a part of those ecosystems, we would really welcome you to join us. The best way to do that is to reach out to Derek. It's Derek, D-E-R-E-K, at peoplevextinction.com. Derek at peoplevextinction.com. We would love for you to join us because when these ecosystems and these species are gone, they're gone forever. I have a 4-year-old, and I'm terrified of the notion that he will only know about animals from books and from stuffed animals. It's something that I don't think any of us can tolerate. So with that, we'll close. A administrative note, you can now please join the Global Philanthropy Foundation team, Global Philanthropy Forum team and your fellow conference attendees for a speed networking event. You join from the link in the agenda that I believe that you've received. So thank you for having us. We'd love for you to all be a part of People versus Extinction. Please reach out to us if we can involve you in it.